So what do you mean something just washed up on the beach? What are you talking about?
Yeah, it's just
What was
not any surf fishing day when you're fishing in the South Bay nowadays. It really is interesting how times have changed, and I think I told you the story before about how when I was probably like 12 maybe or something, and I worked for Fred Oakley, and we would go all along the coast, but we would go underneath the Venice Pier and catch sand crabs in the middle of the night down there. And one night we wear these big waders. And one night I really had to take a whiz. And so I ran up into the parking lot and was like getting off my waders as I was going. And when I got somewhere close to the bathroom that was in the middle of the parking lot, it was a big cement bathroom. There was this big ruckus going on inside. God knows, it was like 2 a.m. what was going on. And so I just took a pee right there. And halfway through, police officer drove up, rolled down his window, looked at me. He said, "What are you doing? The bathroom's right there." I said, "Considering what's going on in the bathroom right now, I was afraid to go in there." And he looked at me and he said, "I'm afraid to go in there too," and drove away. So like back in the day, you worried about maybe a fist fight was going on or something like that. Well, down at Rat Beach, Torrance Beach, so right where it meets Palos Verdes, has been known for my whole life as Rat Beach, right after Torrance. The first thing that washed up, so this was on, I think it was on Sunday after late afternoon, was a head. And then later, about half an hour later, a body or what was left of it, because fish. And so they went down there, they cordoned the whole thing off. Of course, they got all the surf fishermen away, whoever discovered it. And then it came out on the news today that it was some homeless guy living underneath the Redondo Pier, that another guy, I don't know if he was a homeless guy or whatever, obviously didn't love him too much, just shot him right in the face, decapitated him, and threw him into the water. So you got
Oh
to
my
you got to watch
goodness.
out where you go surf fishing now. And it's always good, when you're down there, to look back occasionally over your shoulder and kind of see what's going on. Always pay
See what's
attention to
going
what's
on.
going on around you.
Hi, Tim Ogilvy. Thanks for joining us. Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. Bill Varney and Dave Hansen here, your saltwater guide. We're talking, we're surf fishing. We're talking all kinds of crazy stuff. You heard a little bit of that story right there. We'll get deeper into this as we go, but it's Okuma Wednesday. I want to thank Okuma for allowing this to happen. And without Okuma, we couldn't do the Wednesday shows. Without all our great sponsors, none of this would happen. We've been doing this now for 4 years, and we have a great following and a great sponsorship. So thank you all very, very much. And thanks for jumping on here. I do apologize. Earlier today, we had the live show going with Justin. We had all kinds of stuff going. I had everything ready to run on autopilot, Bill, and we got over to my sister's hotel, which is like the nicest hotel in all of Cabo San Lucas, and we couldn't get on the internet, could not get on, and I had already. We don't spend a lot of time together, so sorry everybody, but I spent some quality time with family, but here we are. We're doing the show now, so that's where we were, and we got Justin kind of here. If he catches something big, he's still fishing at Catalina. They're fishing for lingcod. We'll put him up on the screen if we see a hookup, but you got basically Bill and I, but if some breaking news, we'll be able to see it. If I'm in the middle of a story, we'll be seeing Justin down there. He'll stop me. And if Bill's in a good story, I'll stop him. But it's Wednesday, Bill. Elliot just got your game plans all posted for everybody. Hopefully
Awesome.
the members are. And then you got a big meeting coming up on Tuesday night, right?
We do. We've got a Zoom meeting with all of our Saltwater Guide members for the surf fishing group, and really looking forward to it. It's going to be a lot of fun. We're gonna talk about what's going on currently. We're going to talk about some different ideas about how to become a better angler right now during the winter time, and then question and answers. Lots of questions and answers, and that's how you learn. That's a fun way to learn.
Yeah, and then you don't really know what people want to know. It's better if they ask. So that's going to be
Right.
wonderful.
That's right.
And then
And
we
sometimes
were
there's some
talking
real
about
gems, Dave. I was saying
question
sometimes
wise.
there's some real gems, Dave. People will say something and you'll be like, "Wow, I never thought of that. That's a great idea."
No, exactly. And that's why it's important for everybody to get involved. We have the questions lying open on the side here. If someone has a good question, Bill always seems to know, at least he can baffle us all with some phenomenal verbiage, but he seems to be pretty good on what he's talking about. I enjoy listening to you. And you're, Kelly, one of our favorite guests to have on the show. Kelly just absolutely loves listening to you, your velvety voice, who you are, and
Oh,
all that stuff. Don't let
oh,
your head
thank you,
get too
Kelly.
big. Kelly's listening right behind me. And then we got little
That's
Marley
good.
running around the background, gang. And Tim Ogilvy, thank you very much. Wait till you see what Kelly and I are going to be wearing tomorrow. Our good friend Tim sent us some phenomenal clothing and hats. We're super excited to show it off tomorrow on the live show. The great Kelly Hansen's going to join us tomorrow, gang. It's been a while. So we're looking forward to it. She's getting ready now, so she'll be ready.
That's great. That'll be fun.
Yeah, so what's going
That'll
on in
be
the
fun.
surf fishing world, Bill?
Well, first is the weather. Everybody experienced all that wind last weekend. Of course, you could see Justin over at night at Catalina and that wind swell, where that's the one thing that people need to know a little bit more about in the surf fishing world is that you basically have two different types of swells. You have ground swells and you have wind swells. Ground swells are created by wind also. All swells are created by wind, with the exception, of course, with a tsunami, which is from an earthquake. But all the rest are from wind. And swells originate anywhere from 100 miles offshore, 50 miles offshore, to thousands of miles offshore. So when we have swells that originate down in Veracruz, Mexico from a hurricane, or down in New Zealand or Australia, or Picatan or off Antarctica, 55 miles away, such a long distance to travel, and they have so much energy because many times they're created in seas that are 35 to 55 foot seas. Like when you watch The Deadliest Catch, that's where those waves originate. And then over a distance, they clean up basically, and then they come to shore as groups of swells. In our surfing world, we used to call that it being corduroy, where there's one swell after another with a pretty much equal distance between each one. So those are ground swells. Ground swells from a fishing and a boat and from a surf fishing perspective, and really surfing also, are easy to manage. You can fish in between them or cast in between them. On the other hand, wind swells, which are caused by winds that are close to the shore, have a very short duration between their swells. Not only are they not formed very well, so you'll have some that are bigger and some that are much smaller, some that are in between. You'll have a group of small ones, a group of big ones, very confusing oceans. All of that's created by this wind that's close to shore. So when you have a wind swell, the duration between a swell or wave that breaks and the next wave could be 5 or 6 seconds, a very short period of time. When you have a ground swell that originated 3,000, 5,000 miles away, often you'll have anywhere between 14 and 20 seconds between the swells, which will give you much more time to get organized and won't churn up the bottom so much. So last weekend, that's what we saw, the wind swell. It turned the water into chocolate milk. You could look at the water from Santa Barbara, Carpinteria, all the way to San Diego. It was like chocolate milk. It had a lot of eelgrass in it and so forth. So fishing was slow last weekend. This weekend, we have a big storm coming. I know that you guys were talking about it yesterday, the cyclone bomb, which is actually a really unusual storm in that it's coming down from the Aleutians, but instead of raking along the Alaska coast, the British Columbia coast, and into Washington, it's actually coming straight down about 150 miles off of the coast. And then right off of San Francisco, kind of between Eureka and San Francisco, it's going to stop and come straight inshore from right there. So I think we'll have some effect down in Southern California all the way to San Diego, maybe some light rain, heavier rain possibly on Sunday. The meteorologists don't really know. There's a big question about how much wind is going to be with it. But the other thing that we know is that when that storm is over, and that would be on Monday going into Tuesday, we're going to have another Santa Ana setup for next week, and we should have a beautiful week during the Thanksgiving week, and some really good onshore and offshore fishing next week.
And our good friend Rick, I think you kind of answered it, but you see that question he's got right there?
Let's see, how was the swell different from the surf? So the swell is what you see offshore. So when you go offshore in a boat and you're going over those, what would be considered waves when they get to the beach, those are the swells offshore. And then when those swells get into shallow enough water and they break, that's when they become the surf or waves. That's when they actually break and become a wave. So that's really the difference. And in surf fishing, you'll always have better luck with a ground swell period of time than you will with a wind swell, where the water is really upset, doing different things. Currents are going in funny directions. Fish know that something's unusual when they see that, and they have a tendency to put their nose in the sand and not bite then.
When it's basically like a washing machine, right?
Exactly, because they really don't know what's causing it. It's not common. It's not normal.
Swim, huh?
That's right. They'll try to find somewhere where they can basically hide and be safe while they wait for that to calm down. And it will really cut back on their feeding because they're more interested in finding safety than they are finding food.
So then would you think coming out of something like that, what's going to happen when you come out of that the next day? Probably they're going to eat like crazy because they're starving because they couldn't eat the day before, or no?
That's exactly what happens in the surf. So often in like October, November, December, sometimes into January, the beginning of January, you have these storm systems where you have some rain and some wind and so forth. And then it's followed by a Santa Ana condition that sets up, which means that you have much calmer water situation and then a warming of the water in the afternoon. Now, it doesn't warm as much offshore, but closer to shore where the water is shallower and it has less area for it to warm, it warms up quicker near the shore, and it tends to have some really good fishing, excluding the Corbina, of course, but in the yellowfin croaker, spotfin croaker, perch, all the different sharks, those are all usually really good during this time of year when we get into these Santa Ana conditions. And then you get into January, first week, second week of January, and really all the way through about the middle of April. And you don't really have the Santa Ana set up anymore. So when you get that wind and the swell from the northwest, there's nothing to mitigate it, and it just makes it worse and worse and worse over that part of the winter. And then after April 15, the water begins to warm up, the swells begin to come up from the south, and then you have the summer, and before you know it, you're back into it again.
Right. The Santa Ana conditions, and you and I were kids, were like the very best time to be. Everyone was in school. All the tourists had gone home. We had the beaches to ourselves, and it was flat. I mean,
absolutely.
And then if you're a surfer like Bill, you got a little swell and you got it blowing offshore. That's like for those of you in the mountains, that's powder conditions. That's like the best you can be, where it's peeling off the top, blowing out to sea, and it's like 75 degrees and it's November and you're surfing. Yeah. Same with surf fishing too, though. The water's really flat. It doesn't have that gnarly chop like it will in the summertime. And it gets pretty spectacular, gang. Yeah, I love the Santa Anas growing up in Southern California in October, November was the very best time. Indian summer, we call it.
Absolutely. And that will come and go. We'll have a storm. It'll be Santa Ana, storm, Santa Ana. So look forward to that. Like, try to plan your surf fishing trips around the weather. And when you see that weather turn, and what will normally happen is when the Santa Anas come in, it will get calm for one day. Then it will be some strong offshore winds with the Santa Ana, and then they will relax and it will get calm again. So all of those times are good. And another thing that a lot of folks don't know is that often when we have storms out of the northwest in the wintertime, everything gets blown out, particularly along the Orange Coast area, Huntington, really all the way down to San Diego. Because of its angle, you get this side wind down there, and it just blows everything out, and it's just nasty as can be. But for those of you who are from the South Bay, you know that when it rains, and especially when it rains hard, that the wind at Redondo, Hermosa, and Manhattan, rather than blowing onshore, blows straight offshore. And the reason for that is that the low is spinning in a circle. And as it goes over Southern California, it goes out along the coast and it blows up along the South Coast, which makes it windy down there. So the wind comes out of the Southwest. But because it's coming out of the Southwest, that means that on west facing beaches, which would be Hermosa, Manhattan, Redondo, the South Bay, it blows straight offshore. So you can't fish at all in Huntington Beach. But if you were to go to the beach in Hermosa Beach on that same day with your raincoat, absolutely perfect conditions. And really the other thing, Dave, to remember, and something that you and I grew up on and we love, is that there is no time better than Santa Ana conditions, and particularly when it's raining, to go to Redondo Harbor, to King Harbor, and go bonito fishing. It's good now. It gets really good when it's raining. If you're out there on days fishing the bobber and feather and it's raining, every one of those little drops that hits the water, the bonito really think that's anchovy, schooling up on the top of the water. And it's some fantastic fishing. So many people think, oh, it's windy and it's raining and I don't want to go out there. And I would go down there and it'd be me and like two other people in the entire harbor, had it all to ourselves from the rocks to catch bonito, just one right after another. So upcoming this weekend, if we see that rain, it's going to be a good time to get down to King Harbor and see if you can catch a bonito or two.
Absolutely. It's just magical this time of year. Living in, when you and I used to live in Southern California, it was magical. This was the very favorite time of the year. This young man, Armin, I know him very well. And this is what I tell all the kids to say, Bill. When your guys get, I think this is the lamest thing in the world. We are begging young people to get out there and do something other than stare at their phones. And then you got adults down in the marinas. These guys are fishing on the docks. These young men, young women are fishing on the docks. You know why? Because the fishing's really good on the docks. And they're walking around with their backpack, and in their backpack they have their tackle and they have their spinning rods, and they're throwing plastics up and down the edges of the docks and they're catching fish. Then you got these people. We could say they're the people that lost the election. Let's just use that. We can call them whatever you want. And they absolutely hate humans. And they don't want anybody on the dock fishing. And here's what I tell everyone. When they tell you don't fish there, just tell them Dave Hansen's my dad. Just tell them that. And just keep fishing. If they want to call the police and have them come down there and do all that, fine. And then when you guys get a ticket for fishing on the docks, just let me know. I want to go to court with you and stand up there with you and talk to the judge. I want to be there with you. So don't ever think that you're in this alone. I want every young person to fish on every dock in America. I think that's the greatest thing they can do, gang. They're not down there stealing your garbage, your trash that you keep on your boats. They're not down there stealing your stuff. They're fishing. They're down there enjoying themselves, having a good time, doing what you all want them to not do. And then when they do it, y'all complain because they're doing it. I'm sorry. I just had to say it. Thank you, Armin. Thank you. But remember when we were kids, Bill, we got on the,
I have strong feelings about that too. Right. I have strong feelings about that too, Dave. Not only do I want to see young folks go out, do something outside. I guess let's start with that. But go out and have a good time and do something that keeps them from being in a gang or doing drugs or all of the crime or all of the other options that they have. But the truth is like when I was a kid, and I believe it or not, I still do it today. I love fishing on the dock. And my favorite time to fish on the dock is at night when it's completely dark. That is by far the best time to fish on the dock. And I learned many, many, many years ago that if you just walk along the dock, you let your line straight down, so it's maybe 6 feet deep, and you use I in the past would use a sliding worm sinker, the sinkers that you use for a largemouth bass that slide right up on top of your worm. And then below it, I would use a black grub, a 2-inch grub, or even sometimes a 6-inch black worm, always black, and just bounce that along the rocks, walk really slowly, hold your rod down, and just bounce that along the rocks as you go. You would be amazed at how many big, spot fin, yellowfin, you got all the regular surf fish kind of swimming around in there, but you've got spotted bay bass, some big ones, big sand bass down there. I've caught white sea bass doing that before, and I've done it like all along the edge of the dock on the inside where it's really shallow. I do it along the edge of my buddies' boats and do it. And when they're getting the boat ready and we're going out to do something tonight and all that, I'm out there dragging my lure around all the way in a circle around the boat so I can catch some fish.
Yeah, exactly. That's how we grew up. Running up and down the docks. And if you could get on a dock, oh my gosh, as a kid, you just felt like you had just won the lottery, gang. Now, I'm not talking about going down and fishing on our docks at Dana Orr Sport Fishing, where we have commercial operations going on and we have people coming in and out. We can't handle that kind of danger. But and I know it's a catch-22 and you're all a bunch of whiny babies, but I'll tell you what I used to do, Bill. I would walk down the walkways and open the gates for the kids, young people, and let them on the docks, because I wanted to see them fishing. I know you come to my seminars and you go to Bill's, we talk about children and young people, not just kids, young people, how they're the future of this industry. And if we keep acting the way we're acting, there won't be an industry. That's why my sister and I learned from my father to give back to all these things that are going on. There's no one that gives back more than my sister and brother right now. Dana Orr Sport Fishing's there for everything out there. But gang, next time you're yelling at a kid for fishing, remember what you're doing. Stop. Think. What am I doing? Why am I yelling at this young person that's fishing? That is the dumbest thing you could be yelling at him for. I love those videos on YouTube, the people that are getting kicked out of private lakes. I don't like the guys that are fishermen that get aggressive, because that's just dumb. Why do you want to give us an ugly name? But the people that are hassling young people, I get so angry. It just pisses me off to know. And this is my passion. This is Bill's passion. If you could look back to what Bill and I were doing 50 years ago, 55 years ago, we were those kids begging for an opportunity to fish wherever we could wet our lines.
That's exactly right. And, I used in King Harbor, I used to go down to this one kind of set of docks. And of course, I didn't have a boat or any, I didn't have a key or a boat or anything. And I would climb around the fence, which wasn't very well set up, and then get down on the dock and fish. Well, this guy comes up, and he's not that time, but another time when I was halfway around the fence, and he was like, "What do you think you're doing? This is private property. You can't be in here." And I said, "Well, I'm just coming in to fish off the dock. I just want to fish off the dock." And he said, "Okay, I'll let you do it this time. Get back up. Let me open the gate." So he opened the gate. I went down there. So the next time I came down there, a couple of weeks later, I go walking up and I rattled the gate to see if maybe it was unlocked. And he comes walking up. His name is Bob. And he unlocks the gate and he said, "Hey, you're Billy, right?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "We coming for fish?" I go, "Yeah, I'm coming fishing." So I went and fished on the dock. Well, the next time I came, which was the next weekend after school was over, Bob came up there and he opened up the gate again. And I said, "Why do you keep letting me in? I mean, I want to come in, but I don't really understand." And he said, "Because I know you're fishing, and when you're down here fishing, I can keep my eye on you." And I thought, that's such a good point, because I'm down there having a good time doing my thing. He can keep his eye on me, so I'm not taking anything or stepping on anybody's boat or messing up their ropes or whatever. So it actually worked out better than telling people to leave and being mean to them and then having them come back in the middle of the night and egging your boat.
Right. No. And I just don't understand this mentality, but it was going on when we were kids. My buddy Dave Burris is right here. We got kicked off at lots of docks. We got kicked out of lots of areas. I want to show everybody this video of Okuma, because if without Okuma, we can't do the show. And then we're going to really talk about how much fun it is to fish. We're going to get deeper into that right now, but I just want to show you this real quick, and then we'll get going.
Hey guys, this is John Bretz with Okuma Fishing Tackle. What we have here is a new Promar Ahi bait feeder series, which will come in a 500 through 8,000 size. So everything from ultralight and ice fishing all the way up to saltwater applications. It's going to have 7 stainless steel ball bearings plus a roller bearing. So again, great for freshwater and saltwater. What we've done this year with the new A series is that we've upgraded these reels with flight drive. Flight drive makes this extremely smooth when you turn the handle, extremely durable, and just gives you a better overall feel while you're fishing all day long. The other big upgrade is the drag system. We've gone from a Japanese felt drag washer system to carbonite. So you have carbon fiber drag washers, which can be great so you can get great drag pressure, but also when you tighten that down, if you happen to leave it compressed, it's not gonna have memory. So it's gonna perform, for many years for you. The other nice thing with the Promar Ahi bait feeder is that you have the on-off bait system. So when you turn that handle, it's gonna automatically engage. The other great feature is that you'll see the rotor design. This is our CFR, or cyclonic flow rotor. Everything's corrosion resistant materials. And then you also feature a rigid metal handle. So for saltwater applications, this thing's gonna be super durable. One of the best parts about this reel, although we just gave it a nice cosmetic update, we've upgraded a lot of features, is that it starts at $79.99 for a 500 size. If you want to find out more on the Promar Ahi bait feeder series, check it out on okumafishingusa.com.
And that bait feeder series, gang, that is my favorite. I love the bait feeder series. I love the whole thing. I talk about it a lot. Back when I ran charters all the time, I used to have 6 of those on the boat all the time. They make everybody a good fisherman, because if you can't cast, you can't fish. And we're going into this casting thing, Bill, because what you're teaching people, what I'm teaching people, what Dave Burris, you, myself, everybody that started fishing when they were little kids, only thing we ever wanted to learn how to do was to cast. Because you could, your buddy or the older person you were looking at kept catching fish because he could cast to that spot over and over and over again. And that's what fishing on the docks as a little grommet, a little kid or a young person, that's what it teaches you. Lure placement, get between the boat and the dock and the line and the piling. And then you take that and you move up to what Bill does now, what I do. It all started from when we were little kids and having a good spinning reel, like that bait feeder series that John just talked about, right? It's like super important, Bill.
Absolutely right. I talk about this a lot. I'll go on my long range trips and the skipper will look at his sonar and he'll take me to some place in the middle of the ocean and he'll tell me to throw a sardine out and let some line out. And I've got 100-pound tuna. When you are lake fishing, surf fishing, bay fishing, it takes so much skill in order to cast in between those docks, right up against a piling without getting snagged, between boats, in other areas, to look at it, be able to look at an area and say, oh, there's a small eddy circulation there. I have to be able to cast right onto the edge of that. That's how you learn to become a great angler. If you're just going out on a boat and the deckhand's tying a hook on for you and you're putting a sardine on and letting line out, fishing, okay, I'll give you that. But that is not the most skillful way to fish. And the more time that you spend freshwater bass fishing, trout fishing, surf fishing, bay fishing, the better you'll be at all of the other types of fishing.
Oh, absolutely. And then as that translate as you go, you think about this. You guys are everyone out there is worried, oh, kids today or young people today aren't, I keep saying kids, I mean to say young people, and I'm sorry, aren't learning a skill. If they're down there on your dock fishing, they are learning a skill, baby. They are learning a skill.
Absolutely.
That bait placement, that learning how to practice, that learning how to be determined and do it all. How many times, I don't know about you, Bill, but many nights when I was in the corner by myself, my friends were down there and I couldn't cast to where they were catching, I was crying. because I couldn't get my bait to where they were fishing. I'm not talking I'm talking when I was a kid on the docks trying to figure this thing out. It's not easy. You have to put together you got to put together a whole bunch of talent, right?
You really do, and you really have to practice. When I was a kid and I was learning to use a conventional reel for the first time, so probably around 8 years old or so, the lot next to our house was a vacant lot, and so I would stand out there in the afternoon after school, at night in the dark, and I would cast with my Pen 500 my brains out. I'd put a sinker, or I remember I had this heavy rubber thing I tie on the end, and I'd cast that rod and reel it in and cast it and reel it over and over and over again. Well, this one day I'm out there, and by then I'd gotten pretty good at casting, and I cast it way out there, and I'm retrieving it through the grass in this open field. And all of a sudden I see this thing out of the corner of my eye. And as the sinker gets closer to me, almost to the end of my rod, it lands on the wall in front of me, 2 feet in front, about a 3-foot barn owl. I almost had a heart attack. It thought my sinker was a mouse, I presume, and it followed it right up next to me within, like I said, within a couple of feet of me. And if anybody's ever seen one of those barn owls, that their face is at least as big as your own face, and it's almost perfectly round and it's flat. And they will come right up against things like that, like you as you're standing there. So just practice makes perfect. Just get out there and just practice, whether it's in the water, in a vacant lot, in a park. And once you get that stuff down, you'll have it.
Yeah. Many don't give up on it either. Many of us could not believe that we would ever figure it out. It was hard in the very beginning, but nowadays build these spinning reels that they have. Remember the old spinning reels that they had? I think they were not Shakespeare. They were I know the reels we had were called Ocean, and they were all aluminum, big giant clunky aluminum spool was like a lightweight, or you had the big clunky metal spool that you couldn't cast. You had the little clunky aluminum spool, but then you had the metal spool. But then what was those what were those spinning reels?
Well, we had the Mitchell Garcia. Remember those? Mitchell Garcia.
Yeah.
And they were the best back in the day.
Oh, when you grab one today, they're so heavy. They're so heavy compared. But man, if you had a Mitchell Garcia, they were kind of like a blackish, dark green color with I remember the drag on the top was red. The plastic thing was red. If you had a Mitchell, you were the man.
They were matched. Those were matched up with Roddy rods, Mitchell Garcia and Roddy rods. And that was what my dad had, in the 50s and the 60s when I was first learning how to get out there and go fishing. And, remember, they would always break down. They would easily get sand inside of them. You would often be taking it apart when you're at home, cleaning it all up and re-oiling it and putting it all back together again. But that was some good equipment back in those days.
Had that big gearbox on the side and the little stainless steel Phillips screws, and you take that piece off the side. Oh yeah, and you throw a bunch of grease in there and thought you were really helping it out a lot.
That's right.
Yeah,
that's right. It was grease. That's right. It wasn't oil. It would be grease, that green grease that was in there.
Yeah.
And we would often fish with that and catch some pretty big fish on those spinning rods. But what was so different than what is happening today, and of course we've seen all of these changes in fishing equipment, whether it's line or hooks or reels or whatever. But rod wise, if you remember on those Roddy rods, especially if you had a bigger spinning reel on there, so that'd be like a 5,000 or 6,000 size nowadays, the first guide was like this big, because the line, the spool was pretty big. And as the line came off, it made this big wing, and it went up through this hole, and you cast it and off it would go. Well, take a look at rods nowadays. What a gigantic difference between then and now. look at the size. I'm glad I don't have a fan in my room here. Look at the size of the first guide now. That's called a microwave guide. Look how small that is. That is just a little bit smaller than a pencil in diameter. So back in the day, they were this big around. I can't even get it in the picture. They were this big around, these huge first guides. And so the theory back then was that you've got all this spin coming off, and you whale the thing out there. It's got all this spin. So they want to have a big first guide so it can spin and then it can go up. Well, what they later figured out was that when it was doing all that spinning coming off the reel, it was losing all of this energy because it was using it to spin to go through the first guide. So when they reduced the first guide and all the rest of the guides to smaller than the diameter of a pencil, what they found out is that, like, if you go out in your yard and you turn on your hose and it's full blast and the hose is going 8 feet, if you compress the hose with your hand to half its size, it'll shoot out 12 feet. So they realized that as it was taking energy and coming off the reel, it would actually cast further. And I was very skeptical. And so Seeker built 4 rods with these American guides, the microwave guide, and 4 without. And we just stood 2 of us in these 4 groups along the beach, and we cast to see how far we could cast. And I would say on average with the compression microwave guides, about 60 feet farther each cast. That's how big of a difference it makes.
Wow. I never even thought of that. But yeah, the guides are totally different than they were when we were kids. But I didn't know what happened, what was going on. I thought we were just trying to save money on material.
Yeah, really. But it's funny, Dave, you look at it, like if you went back and looked at like your rod from the 60s when you were a kid, the guide was really, that first guide was really big. And then as time went on, that first guide got smaller and smaller and smaller to eventually of what it is today. It wasn't like they were using the bigger one and all of a sudden one day they're like, hey, let's try this. It actually progressed over 50 years to get smaller and smaller and smaller till finally they found the optimal size for it.
Makes all the sense in the world, the energy slowing it down. Bill, I got to bring something up. I was asked this question the last couple of days, and people are wondering why. Dave, how it come you haven't, now that everything's shifted and there's a new person in charge of the United States of America, how come you haven't started talking about the closures and all that? Well, because none of this is I can't afford to get suppressed any more than I already am, but wait until after January. February 1st is going to be a whole different world. You're going to hear us talk a whole different way because freedom of speech, I know a lot of you hate it. You don't like it. But freedom of speech is coming back. It's making a comeback in America, but it's not going to make the total comeback until after, I'd say February 1st, because I think that first week and a half is going to be absolutely mind-numbing. I think there's a lot of people that hate America and are going to do everything they can to kind of stop this. But America has spoken, gang. We're tired of it. We're ready to talk. It was a giant landslide. America's tired of being suppressed and tired of not being able to talk. And you're going to hear me talk more about the real things that are affecting fishing. And we're going to be talking way in more depth. Bill loves to talk about it. I just can't financially. I couldn't take it. We got beat up pretty bad over the last 3.5 years by speaking the truth and talking about all the closures. It's coming. And I promise you, I would get ready for February 1st. We're going to be bringing back freedom of speech in America. And I know a lot of you are pissed about it, but not enough of you. 0.1% of the population is pissed about freedom of speech, but America has spoken. 85% of America voted for freedom of speech, and it's coming. So that's why we're kind of still suppressed and we're not really standing up there to, like, very close personal member of my family asked me today, how come you haven't been talking about making fishing great again? Because we still got 3 months or 2.5 months to get through before we can actually talk freely again, like Americans. So there you go. That's why, gang.
Yeah, and it is really something we would love to talk about, not to put anybody down or anything like that. It's not about that at all. It's just being transparent and getting all the information out there so that you guys out there can make your own decisions. So in that, I can't talk right now about the things I would really want to talk about. Dave, there is one thing I can do, if you'll just forgive me for a second here.
Oh yeah, the dance. That's going to be the dance that's sweeping the nation.
What cracks me up, Dave, is my dad used to dance just like that. My dad, who wore a suit all the time and a tie, looked just like the president. He would always dance like that. We would laugh.
How cool is that? When you see that, it brings you right back. Dave Burris brought up a good thing just a minute ago. If there's a young human on your dock and he's got a fishing rod in his hand, that means he's not down there to steal. Now,
yeah, exactly.
They're down there to go fish and learn a skill and be successful and have fun. And they're down there because there's a bunch of fish on your dock. So just remember, before you open your mouth, my son asked me how you tell the difference between the left and the right. Okay? If the left is totally concerned about what everybody else is doing, and the right's concerned about what the right's doing. Us, me, what Bill's doing. I could care less what you do. I don't care. I do not care what you do in any way, shape, or form. But you can always tell the people that care about what I'm doing, they're on that side, period. It's so funny. It's so easy to just, that's like, cut it right down the middle. Elon Musk taught me that.
Well, in the fishing world, in the world that we live in, and all of the great people that we meet at the shows and at boats, and regardless of who we or who another person is, in the fishing world, you notice that you have the widest group of ethnicity, sexual orientation, income, socioeconomic structure, all of those things. Like, you go to a Fred Hall show and you see everything there, from the guy who digs the ditch to the guy who's running the bank and everywhere in between it. It is such an inclusive sport. I have met people from every single ethnic, religious, sexual orientation, background. And do we talk about politics, religion, sexual orientation? No, we don't care about those things. All we care about is going fishing and what we catch, and love to talk about it. If you were standing, if there was a man, the poorest man in the world, standing on the beach, and 20 feet away there was the richest man, let's say Elon Musk in this case, standing on the beach, and the poorest man in the world hooked a fish, fought it into the beach, and it was a nice big fish on the sand, the richest man, regardless of how wealthy he was, what he has, what he's got coming in the future, what he's had in the past, will always be envious. And that's the thing about fishing. It always brings everybody down the same level. And because we all have a passion for it, all of this stuff about racism and all this, it drives me crazy. That stuff has never crossed my mind. I've never met a person who's racist. I've definitely met people with different opinions. But as far as fishing is concerned, it brings everybody down to the same level, the same interest, the same love. It's a wonderful thing. And I think a lot of the people who run who manage fishing, like the Fish and Game Commission and so forth, they have not experienced that. And they think that fishing needs to be more inclusive and more of this and more of that, when in fact, it's very much so that way already. And I know that personally. I was a baseball coach for 9 years, football, soccer, all these things, basketball. And when you look at all hockey, when you look at all those different sports, they attract a specific, in a lot of cases, ethnic group or socioeconomic group into each one of those sports. Like going to hockey. Do you see a lot of people of color in hockey? No. Go into basketball. Are there as many whites in basketball? No. These are sports that are groups of individuals. When you get to fishing, It's everybody. That's what makes it so great. Such a great sport. Love it.
And that's why it's so important to take a kid fishing. I don't care if
Yep.
you're yellow, green, purple, black, orange, whatever color. I don't care. Let's go fishing. Let's go have fun. I will help you to the ends of the earth to be successful when you go fishing, and I don't care. I don't care who you are or how you spell your name or what, and I don't care what you drive or where you live. None of that matters. I just want to see everybody fish, and I want to keep fishing open. And there, something that blew my mind. There were some people that I spent some time with a couple weeks ago, Bill, that are on the inside of closures and stuff. And they thought that when they opened the cow cod conservation areas to fishing, these are people that are making the decisions. They thought that you could catch cow cod in those areas now, since they opened them. And I was showing them one of our really good friends, Jeff, just caught a 22-pound cow cod in the cow cod conservation zone that they opened. And I'm all, look at this. We got to throw this back. It took almost an hour to descend this thing down with the anchor. And I was just like, and it's all, why? Isn't cow cod conservation zone open? I said, yeah. Just like I said last year when I was standing on top of the mountain and everybody was going, oh, it's so exciting. We get depth. And I'm like, who cares? The stuff that lives there, you can't keep. Why are you all excited about fishing in a depth where you can't keep anything? That's the dumbest. And now, all out of nowhere, here comes all these electric reels and people dropping down 2 hooks 800 feet deep to catch a fish that you can't keep. I'm sorry. That kind of stuff is what I'm dying to be able to open my mouth up and talk about. It's going to piss off everybody, but I don't really care. I just want the freedom to speak again. So February, look out. Either our channel's going to blow up or it's going to blow out. I don't know.
Time will tell.
Yeah, well, we're not going anywhere either way. I got all these words, and Kelly loves it when I spend them all on the show instead of yelling at her. But look at Tim Ogilvy. Have you ever fished Lake Henshaw, Bill?
I've never fished Lake Henshaw. No, I'm not familiar with Henshaw.
It's in San Diego County, I guess, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And I guess
I fished Hodges. I have fished Hodges numerous times. I would love it if they could get water back into Lake Hodges again. So it's like about, I don't know, halfway full or so. It has an earthen dam on the downside, which would be the west side of it. And of course, straight downstream from the dam is Rancho Santa Fe, one of the most expensive places to live in all of California, with some of the most beautiful homes you've ever seen. But unfortunately, when they made the dam, they made it an earthen dam. They didn't put a big cement, like it was Lake Mead or something. They didn't put a big dam there like Boulder Dam. And as that thing has been cracking away, they've been really worried about it, of course, breaching, and then that water going down the hill into Rancho Santa Fe onto the golf course and flooding the houses there. So hopefully someday Hodges will be back, because man, it was back in the day, it was such good fishing there. There were all kinds of reeds and trees in the water, and there was so much water in Hodges that it went under, okay, we're going way back now. It went under 395, which is now the 15. That used to be 395. Went under 395 and over into Rancho Bernardo. That's how big that lake was.
Wow.
So yeah, I'm not sure about Henshaw, but
I bet you Al's fished it before.
Mm-hmm.
If we're probably Al, Tim, I would give Al a call and find out. I don't know, largemouth bass, maybe they stock it. I don't know what lives there. I have no idea. I've never been there. Palomar Mountains, it's probably got stock trout, maybe largemouth bass. I love fishing largemouth bass with live goldfish.
That's for sure.
Terrible.
Yeah, they probably got largemouth, smallmouth there. I'm sure they got panfish. They got trout in the lake, depending on what time of year it is and when they're stocked and before they go down to that deeper water. But yeah, Captain Al will know. And then, Captain Al and I, we've got a big challenge coming up for us next week. We watched Justin's gigantic It looked pretty gigantic. It was kind of hard to tell with the photographs, but his gigantic lobster the other day. And now we're going to have to beat that next week when we go out on Thursday.
Yeah, you are. That'll be fun to watch. It'll be fun to watch. It'll be fun to see what happens. I'm excited that you get to go fish with Al. I think the two of you are going to get along just fine. You guys are going to have a good time out there. That lobster ended up weighing 12.7 pounds, gang. And we didn't have the heart to tell Justin when he called Kelly and I that night and said, hey, I got one like Kelly's. And we both looked, and Kelly was like, that isn't even close. Because Kelly's was 18 3/4 pounds. So she keeps an eye on it. She knows what she's looking at. And she said, that thing's about 11 pounds, and it ended up being 12.7. So that's pretty good. She got a pretty good handle on it. But she watches. She wants to make sure no one catches one bigger than her.
And how do those big ones taste?
Like lobster.
Yeah, just the same. They're just bigger.
You just got to break them into pieces and cook them. You can't cook it whole.
Mm.
It'll get all gristly on the outside and dried out. You got to quarter them or cut them up into pieces. And the legs on there, phenomenal. Better than king crab legs, and they're huge. When they're that big, they're like that big around. It's We're having lobster for dinner tonight because one of our members called me up last night and goes, Dave, there's no video on how to cook lobsters. And I'm like, no, there isn't. That means I have to eat lobster for dinner tonight. Darn it. I got to cook some lobsters to eat for dinner tonight. So I got a bunch of them in my freezer for when I was up in Adolfo's Lopez Mateos. So we're going to have some lobsters tonight, gang, and make that video, and we'll post it on the website. You can see how Dave cooks them. I only like to have them boiled. I like to boil them, split the shell in half, pull the meat out, dip it in butter, and eat it. I don't like them on the barbecue. I don't like them on the grill. It dries them out to me. But when you boil them in boiling hot water and pull them out of the shell and cut the meat up, it's snowball white, dip in a little butter, little garlic butter. Yeah, I think I'll have 6 for dinner.
And a couple of cubes of butter.
And at least one. At least one. I like to put butter on my butter.
Gonna float it in butter.
Yeah.
You know, one of the best, this is a good story. One of the best lobster I ever had, Dave, was in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. What? It was like, I remember sitting in the restaurant. I was like, the ocean's like 2,000 miles that way, and it's like 3,000 that way. It was a long way away. So we went to this restaurant, you know, and of course the company I was working for at the time, the bank, paid for it. I had some clients there, and it was this. I was doing student loans in those days before I did home loans, and it was the director of financial aid, and his girlfriend was there with him. He brought her to dinner, and so we looked at the menu, and I said, "Man, this lobster thermidor, this looks really good." And I thought to myself, you know, I'm in the middle of the country, but it's worth taking a chance. If it's bad, I can always get something else. Well, I got it, and it was actually very good. It was really fresh and super tasty and stuff. The fellow that was with me, he ate about half of his because they were big and rich. Nice. And his girlfriend, she ate her entire lobster. And then when she was done, she asked him if she could eat his lobster, which she did. And we had an aperitif, a little drink after dinner, and off they went. And I said, okay, I'll see you guys at the meeting tomorrow morning. So the next morning I go to the meeting, and there's the director of financial aid. And I said, hey, where's your girlfriend? And he looks at me and he said, she's not feeling too well this morning. Yeah, that's what you get when you eat 2 lobsters.
Right. That happened to me the other night in Adolfo's. We went to the oyster farm, Bill, and I love oysters. And I had like 20 oysters at the oyster farm. They're $0.25 a piece, and we tried them, eating them off of a piece of plywood that probably 100 million people have eaten it off of. But I was right there, me and the flies and the oysters. It was incredible. But then that night I paid heavy. It was terrible.
I bet. Your body was like, what is this?
Oh, even The guys that run the oyster farm, they were looking at me going, they were just shaking their heads when they were watching me eat them. They're like, "You're an animal, dude." And I've never had oysters for a quarter a piece. I am eating all of them.
Really, really.
Yeah, pretty bitchin' place.
So delicious.
So next week, Tuesday night, Zoom meeting.
Yeah, Tuesday night we're going to have our Zoom meeting for everybody. So I'm going to let everybody know tomorrow about that, and then we'll get the link over to them. And like I said, we're going to cover all those things. And then another thing we're going to talk about is our next on the beach clinic. You know, where's it going to be, and when is it going to happen? We're going to have to kind of figure out what the show schedule is and when we're going to need to be around, and it'll be somewhere in February, I would presume. So we're really looking forward to that. And then once that's over, we'll move on to the summer.
Absolutely. Gang, we're trying to put something together for December. We're working on, I don't want to say anything. Justin kind of talked about it yesterday. I have to find a facility, and it has to be able to hold us. I can't tell you guys that I have one yet because I don't have one, but I'm working very hard on it. And I'd love to have a Christmas party before Christmas. It'd be Kelly and I's treat for all of you, but we got to make it. If I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it right. I'm going to do it first class. So just let me figure this out. And if I can pull it off, I will. I'm doing the very best I can. I didn't forget about any of you. We thought about doing it on one of my sister or brother's boats. That's not going to work because we'll have to turn people away. We thought about doing it at Todd's office, but best case scenario, we can get 40 people in there. That's not going to do it because we have 4,000 members. I can't tell you, oh, you can't come to the Christmas party. No, it's going to be wide open. The place we're looking at, it'll be very exciting. It'll be centralized, located in the middle. There'll be food and stuff, but I just have to make sure that I can pull it off. And we'll announce as soon as I know for positive, I promise you. And then the likes of Bill Varney and Justin and Al and Pablo, everybody will be there, but we'll do it big time. We'll do it right. And if we can't pull it off this year, I promise you it'll happen next year. But I'm working hard on it right now. I don't want you all to think we're not. We're thinking about you. We appreciate every one of you that watch us every day. We appreciate all of you that are members and everything you do and all the great sponsors and everybody. And Bill Varney, I appreciate you being here with me every Wednesday. It helps. I did this show by myself for 3.5 years, 5 days a week. And my dad used to tell me, how the heck do you have so much garbage to talk about? I was like, Dad, it's not garbage. Dad, stop. But yeah, now having everybody involved, it really helps. And I appreciate all of you. And we're going to bring Marty Wakefield. He runs a light boat. Light boats are working right now very, very hard. There's so much squid in Southern California. And there's so much that is unknown about this squid industry and the light boats and the purse seiners, and people are saying, oh, they're raping the ocean and all this garbage. So we're bringing on the guy, Marty Wakefield. He has a permit. He has a light boat. He does it for a living. He'll be on the show on Friday. He's taking lots of pictures. They're catching lots of squid every night. So we'll have some great videos for you to show you during the show on Friday. So watch that. And then tomorrow, we're bringing the great Kelly Hansen back on the show. She hasn't been on for a few weeks, so that'll be fun. That'll be exciting. We're looking forward to it. And then Bill's going to be live on Tuesday. Elliot will get the email out to all of you that are members of Bill's bundles on the website, Bill's Surf Fishing Bundle. It's a good thing. If you're not a member, you want to be a member. Surf fishing's free. You can get down on the beach, fish anytime you want. You're not going to be affected by the price of fuel. You're not going to be affected by anything. You get down on the beach and go fishing. Bill's mentors told him to teach people how to do this. Don't leave it. Don't. And so Bill's passionate about it. Right, buddy?
Absolutely. And, you know, one of the great things about we talked a few minutes ago is that if you get down there and do a little surf fishing, you don't have to be an expert at it. Just go down there, have some fun. It makes you a better angler. It makes you a better angler on the boat, on the water, anywhere that you're fishing. So, you know, take a little bit of this, a little bit of lake fishing, a little bit of stream fishing, a little bit of beach fishing, a little bit of bay fishing, and all that information together, take it out on the boat with you. You'll learn a lot. You'll be really much better at an angler as you would if you just kind of are maniacal and concentrate just on one thing. Kind of spread out your interests, and it will make you better at all things.
Yep. And if you don't know what we're talking about, right there's the QR code. If you give us a call, if you give us If you jump on the website, gang, we'll give you a free look for 7 days. You can look at it for free. You can decide for yourself if it's even worth it. We don't want anybody buying anything they don't want, period. That's not what we're about. We believe we have the best product out there for anybody anywhere on the planet, not just Southern California, anywhere. Our stuff will cross over. It'll cross over to Texas. It'll cross over to Florida. It'll cross over to Australia. It's just fish. Fish are dumb. They're the smartest fish in the ocean is dumber than the smartest mouse. But what Bill and I try to teach you all is how to catch them. And they're just fish, wherever you're at. Our techniques work just as well as anybody else's, if not better. So check it out. If you want a free look, let us know. Give me a call. When you access Bill's bundles, you get to access Bill. The man you're listening to right now, he's going to be the guy that talks to you. He's going to be the guy that answers your phone calls. He's going to be the guy on the Zoom call. The really cool thing about the Zoom calls, we started doing these a couple of years ago. We don't know what you want to talk about. And Tim Ogilvy might want to talk about something that Dave Burris didn't think of, or Dave Burris might want to talk about something that the whole group, even you, didn't think about. So that's why the Zoom meetings are so much better than just the personal phone call, because you're going to learn stuff you didn't even know you wanted to know.
Exactly. It's such a good way to learn. And not only do people learn from them, we all learn from another. It gives us a chance to roll all of our ideas together and then go out and practice them. So it is absolutely a great way to learn, and it's by far the fastest way to be a good angler at the beach than to try to figure it out on your own. You could spend your life doing that probably. And of course, the game plan, it's got your weekly game plan, it's got your weekly fish report, it's got articles, videos, personal contact with me. And then in our group, there are several people every week in our group who send me a text, call me, send me a text, or send me an email and say, hey, Bill, I'm going fishing down on this beach this weekend. What do you think? What about the tides? What bait should I use? How should I rig? What time should I go? I mean, where can you get that information? And I love giving it. And you know why, Dave, I love giving it so much? Not only is it really knowledgeable about all that, I mean, I've spent my entire life on the sand. I can look at a picture without a background, but just the sand in the background of somebody holding a surffish, and 9 out of 10 times know what beach that's on. That's how much time I've spent on the beach. But what's so awesome about it is somebody will say, hey, Bill, I'm going down here and what should I do? Blah, blah, blah. I'll give them my advice. And then I'll say, after you go down there, give me a fish report. So I get a report back. It's awesome, man. It's like me being down there fishing. And we figure out if the techniques we talked about, rigging we talked about, timing and tides, if those worked, or we need to adjust those. So that's what it's like being part of the group. We're like a family together, and we have the opportunity to share information to become better anglers.
Absolutely, gang. So check us out. Jump in there. We will see you guys tomorrow, me and Kelly, and you guys will see Bill on Tuesday night if you're lucky enough to be part of the Zoom meeting. And if not,